All right. Well, thank you for joining the Washtenaw County Road Commission's virtual construction information meeting about the projects that we have planned on Miller Road in Scio Township this summer. My name is Emily Kaiser, and I'm WCRC's communications manager, and I'll be the meeting host today along with our project managers. So we're going to dive right into the presentation here. I've got a little bit of housekeeping to do before I turn it over to our engineering staff to talk about the projects. And then at the end, we're going to open it up to your questions and answers. So today we have two presenters with us. Aaron Burkholtz is the Senior Project Manager for Design and Construction at the Road Commission. And today he'll be talking about the Roundabout project planned at the intersection of Miller Road and Wagner Road in Scio Township. We also have Nate Murphy. He is a project manager for both of these projects, and he'll be talking about the bridge replacement project planned on Miller Road over Honey Creek. Both Aaron and Nate's contact information are listed on the slide here, and they will be provided at the end of the presentation as well. So just a few housekeeping items. The meeting audio and video is being recorded and will be posted to wcroads.org in the next day or two. We will send a link to the meeting recording to the project email list once it has been posted. After the presentation, you will be asked to virtually raise your hand during the question and answer period. I will provide instruction at that time on how to do this from either your computer, the Zoom app, or your touch tone phone. The chat feature for this meeting is turned on. If you have a question during the presentation, feel free to ask it in chat and we will address it during the Q&A period. You can find the chat window at the bottom of your screen. You just have to click the chat and it'll pop up and open. All right, and with that, I just want to make one last note, and Nate and Aaron can speak to this more if there are questions, but we do recognize that we are in the middle of some pretty unusual times. And so our contractors and our staff are taking precautions to ensure our safety and employee safety, contractor safety on the job site. We do ask though that you do not approach employees in the field. That's both a safety thing from just being in an active construction zone and also a safety ask about COVID. If you do have questions, we've got Nate's contact information, we have Aaron's contact information, and we ask that you reach out to them versus trying to approach our employees in the field. So if you have any questions, like I said, Aaron and Nate can speak more to that, but just wanted to make a quick note of that before we dive in. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron and Nate to talk about the Miller Road projects.
All right, thank you, Emily. And as Emily mentioned, my name is Aaron Burkholtz. I'm with the Washtenaw County Road Commission. I'm a senior project manager here. I work with the design and construction group here. Nate works with me in the design and construction group. And he and I will be working on this project, this upcoming construction, along with other staff here, including a job site inspector who will be on the job every day with the contractor. So when the contractor is on site performing work, one of our representatives, a road commission inspector, will be there with them. The only exception would be is if there's minor items like end of the day cleanup type things, the inspector may not be there at that point. The inspector, one of their roles on the job site is to keep track of the various pieces of documentation that are needed for a project similar to this. And so again, by and large, there will be an inspector there whenever a contractor is on the job site. They're easily identified. The inspector will have a road commission truck out there, and that's placarded, so you can identify that. But as Emily said, with the pandemic circumstances and just for the safety of the motoring public, a construction zone is a hazardous space. And so for people that might have questions, those that frequently drive through this area or the adjacent residents who live out here, we would ask that you contact Nate or I. Our information is provided and we really would like to speak with you. We're happy to arrange, if you're comfortable with it, a meeting on site to discuss your concerns and your issues, but to approach the on-site inspector or one of the contractor employees, again, there's some risk involved in that. My primary focus of today's public meeting will be to discuss the roundabout there at Miller and Wagner. Nate will focus more on the bridge. But to provide an overview, this overall project actually involves 3 infrastructure investments. The first one is the intersection at Miller Road and Wagner Road, the construction of the roundabout. The other piece of this is the replacement of the bridge on Miller Road over Honey Creek. That bridge is currently weight restricted and has been for many, many years. And then in between the bridge and the roundabout, there's going to be a road resurfacing project. The roundabout and the bridge are being funded with state and federal money in addition to road commission money. And so just not to delve too far into the funding mechanism, but for the roundabout, the state and federal funding sources will pay for approximately 80% of the roundabout construction. The road commission pays the other 20% for the roundabout. For the bridge, state and federal money pays for 95% of the new bridge, and then the road commission pays for the other 5%. And the resurfacing work, the asphalt paving work that's going to be done in between those two projects, that's being funded directly by the road commission with Michigan transportation funds. And Michigan transportation funds are generated primarily through fuel taxes and registration fees. So again, we have an overarching infrastructure investment, but there are three pieces to this investment. The bridge and the roundabout were bid through the Michigan Department of Transportation. When the road commission receives state and federal monies, we bid those projects through MDOT, and the bid letting for this project was on May 1st. So since that point, a low bid contractor has been identified. The name of that contractor is Fonson Company. They're out of Brighton. We've worked with Fonson many times over the years, and so they'll be the prime contractor on this project. That would be, again, for the bridge and the roundabout that was bid through MDOT. Fonson's low bid price for this project is just a little over $2.2 million for the roundabout and the bridge. We've scheduled a pre-construction meeting with Fonson, and at that pre-construction meeting, we will delve into the finer details of the project. And that certainly one of those details will be the schedule. We're expecting that the project at the roundabout would start sometime in late June or early July is when Fonson would likely start the work. But again, we need to talk to them about that. In our contract bid documents, we allow them to start within 10 days after MDOT awards the project. So they have some flexibility as to their start date, and the current completion date in our contract documents is mid-October. But again, things that factor into our construction work that are beyond our control primarily is the weather. Weather plays a great factor in our ability to do many aspects of our construction. Some of those things would be like concrete placement, asphalt placement. Those type of things can be governed by the weather, and we don't have control over that. So as I said, right now we expect a late June or early July start on the roundabout project, and then completion of both the roundabout and the bridge by mid-October. The resurfacing that I mentioned that takes place between the roundabout and the bridge, that's being funded directly by the road commission, and the work is being done through a current contract with the prime contractor on that project is Cadillac Asphalt. And we're actively working countywide right now with Cadillac on various resurfacing projects. And we'll touch on that a little bit later in the presentation, exactly what is involved in that resurfacing. So Emily, you want to go ahead and go to the next slide? And so again, the roundabout project will involve the construction of a single lane roundabout. It involves a fair amount of curb and gutter work. There will be stamped concrete used. So that would be for the splitter islands. That's what we refer to, the center islands. As you approach a roundabout, those are referred to as splitter islands. So the splitter islands will have stamped concrete. as well as the interior circle. The inner circle of the roundabout, there's the smaller interior circle, that's a 30-foot diameter, and then there's the larger diameter circle that's about an 80-foot diameter. And that basically allows for trucks that are turning, that provides a truck apron on the interior of the roundabout. So that area where the truck apron is going to be, that'll be stamped concrete as well. We're going to be installing street lights at the intersection. We've been in discussions with the DTE street lighting group, and that's something that's needed for the safe operation of a roundabout. We need to illuminate the roundabout with street lights in order for it to be safe. And then we'll also be making drainage enhancements. With the curb and gutter, we're going to be basically creating concentrated road runoff, and that'll be handled through the installation of new storm sewer. So we'll have curb and gutter storm inlets, and then new storm sewer will also be constructed as part of our work. Next slide. Here's a overhead and aerial view of the roundabout that's proposed at the intersection. So the diameter, that would be the outer diameter of the roundabout, is approximately 120 feet. The estimated cost is $1 million. And again, the overall bid for the project, both the roundabout and the bridge, came in at $2.2 million. So about $1 million for the roundabout and about $1 million for the bridge. Again, that funding being from state and federal sources as well as the Road Commission. Next slide. I mentioned the nighttime illumination that's needed for to promote the safety of the roundabout. We've worked on several roundabout projects in the past, and working with DTE, we've enhanced the illumination to really focus that lighting where we need it, which is on the roundabout. But again, working on past projects, there have been some lessons learned on our part, as well as DTE, and those have enhanced our focus of that lighting where it needs to be at the roundabout. Next slide. So some advantages of a roundabout, and for this project, based on the peak hour traffic that's identified through this intersection, this very busy intersection in the county, we looked at a couple different types of enhancements. We looked at potentially a standard intersection widening with traffic lights, signal lights, and then we looked at a roundabout. The advantages of a roundabout is it moves traffic more efficiently. Basically, it allows motorists, as they approach the roundabout, to continue at a safe speed through the roundabout based on existing traffic movements. It slows the traffic. On the approaches to the roundabout, I mentioned that we construct splitter islands. That essentially requires a motorist, a reasonable motorist, as they approach the roundabout to slow their speed and to yield to traffic that's within the roundabout, to look to the left to see if traffic is approaching and to be able to stop at a reasonable speed. And so we're very thoughtful in the way we design and construct the approaches to a roundabout in order to promote those slower speeds on the approaches. And the alternate, or the opposite of that, is a traditional intersection, a signalized intersection, where the traffic that's approaching, if there's a green light, they maintain their current speed. So by comparison, a traditional intersection, a traditional signalized intersection, allows a higher rate of speed. To put it bluntly, you're relying on the person approaching the intersection with the red light to stop. And unfortunately, there have been circumstances in the past, I think more so what I see now, more and more people are distracted by a variety of things, including their phones. And so when you go through a traditional intersection, you're relying on that person approaching to not be looking at their phone or messing with their radio. and that they realize they have a red light. If they don't realize they have a red light, that's when we have intersection crashes. And oftentimes those will be broadside or T-bone type crashes. Those can be very severe. For a roundabout, again, by its construction, by its design, you're slowing that approaching traffic, and you're basically requiring that person to pay attention to what the traffic at the intersection is doing so that they can enter that flow of traffic. The other piece that enhances safety is the approach angles. When we do see crashes at roundabouts, generally those are more of the nature of like bumper type incidents, side swipes, but not those severe broadside T-bone type crashes that can occur at a signalized intersection. The other part of a roundabout is, in this case, as we looked at the traditional signalized intersection versus the roundabout that we're going to be constructing, is the roundabout does reduce the impact to the neighboring parcels. Again, because of the way in which a roundabout functions, it allows a smaller footprint for us to be able to accomplish the infrastructure investment. Next slide. So here's an example of roundabout construction. So here you see a crew forming up one of the splitter islands. So they're placing their front forms and their back forms for the new concrete curb and gutter. And they're on the right-hand side of the picture. You can see a ready-mix concrete truck. So again, this is just a good example of one piece of the construction that will be conducted in the intersection. In this picture, you can see kind of in the distance there, it looks like they've already constructed the curb or the inner circle of the roundabout. Next slide. And here's a splitter island during construction, during the casting of the concrete. So again, you can see that the forms, and we refer to those as pins. The steel rods that hold the forms in place are referred to in the field as pins. So you've got your forms and your pins in place. The concrete has been placed. And again, if you look kind of in the distance, you can see that the curb, the white curing compound has been sprayed on the curb. To the right there is, again, commonly referred to as a form truck. So here's a concrete crew hard at work on a construction project. And there's a completed splitter island. So again, you've got curb on each side. You've got the middle splitter island. And then this one, as I look at it, it's a colored concrete in the middle. I don't believe that's been stamped, looking at it in this photo. Again, a further enhancement to our roundabout will be the concrete that's colored will be stamped concrete to create a more attractive appearance for the roundabout. Next slide. Here's an interior island, a central island on a roundabout. And again, our island varies from this one in that we will have a smaller diameter circle inside the roundabout that's approximately 30 feet in diameter that will accommodate plantings. And we've been in discussions with Scio Township. They have interest in pursuing some attractive plantings and maintaining those plantings within that 30-foot diameter center of the roundabout we'll be building at Miller and Wagner. So again, with the colored stamped concrete, and for our project, with that central island and the potential plantings that could be provided, again, it'll further enhance the attractiveness of the completed project. Next slide. One of the biggest challenges of completing a roundabout project is that the hot mix asphalt paving. Similar to this picture, one of the last steps in the construction after the new aggregate base has been completed, after the curb has been installed and the concrete, is to pursue the hot mix asphalt paving. Asphalt paving is done in layers. We call those layers either lifts or courses. So in general, and as we're going to do on this project, it'll involve the placement of 2 courses of asphalt. There will be what we refer to as the leveling course, and then there's a top course. And the top course is what you see when you drive any road, and when you drive the new roundabout, what you're driving on will be that top course asphalt pavement. A roundabout is a challenging project to asphalt pave because of the circular nature and some of the unique angles. But working with our asphalt paving contractors, we've gained significant experience over the years as to the best way to complete this type of asphalt paving. I've mentioned before that the construction site can be a very hazardous place. There's a variety of hazards there. In some instances, we have live traffic adjacent to the work we're doing. In this case, we will not have live traffic. We're going to be closing the intersection at Miller and Wagner in order to do the work. But again, oftentimes that traffic presents a hazard to the on-site personnel. The on-site personnel also have to be concerned with equipment that's on the job site, and then they also have to be wary of the actual materials that are used. Asphalt is placed at approximately 275 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And so asphalt is, it can cause severe burns. So again, as we enter into the asphalt paving phase of the project, we ask that adjacent residents or those that may just be interested in seeing the construction project be very aware of that asphalt going down because it can be quite dangerous. Next slide. A big part of the function of a newly constructed roundabout are pavement markings and permanent signs. So you can see in this picture, this provides that clear direction to the entering traffic as to the need for the approach traffic to yield, and that the traffic that's within the roundabout actually controls the flow of traffic. And over time, as a new roundabout is constructed and open to traffic, motorists, there's a learning curve. We as Americans, by and large, are used to a stop-controlled intersection, a four-way stop, a traffic signalized intersection. There's a learning curve for some motorists to learn how to use a roundabout. During that time, some of the typical confusion you'll see is people, as they approach the yield, they'll stop, even if there's no traffic in the roundabout. They're just so used to stopping at an intersection, they'll stop at the yield sign. Sometimes that people that are in the roundabout will stop in the roundabout in an effort to try to let other traffic enter the roundabout. But again, over time, through our efforts with pavement markings and permanent signage, motorists do learn how to use it in the correct fashion, and that's ultimately what enhances the traffic movement, particularly during peak hours. Next slide. And again, this is just a review of a couple of the things I've mentioned. The traffic that is approaching, that is entering the roundabout, is the traffic that yields. There's a counterclockwise movement within the roundabout, and the island controls the speed. So again, the speed control for a roundabout is a combination of the approach angles and the construction of those splitter islands and that central island that's constructed. Because that is a raised island, the first inner island is raised, but it still allows the truck turning movements, because we look at the turning movement of trucks as they go through the roundabout. So that initial piece of the interior island allows for trucks to ride up on the interior island. And then the center part of the island is raised even further to prevent traffic from driving straight through the intersection. Next slide. And this touches on that. Trucks and large vehicles, in order to negotiate a new roundabout, they need to pass over the central island. And so that's what basically that outer part of the inner island, the central island, is raised but only raised to the point where it still allows trucks to pass over that central island. And what the trucks will be riding on will be that stamped colored concrete that's the interior part of the roundabout. Next slide. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nate, and he can speak some more about the bridge portion of the project.
Thank you, Aaron. My portion of the project that I'm going to discuss is the bridge down at the bottom of the hill there. As Miller goes around the curve there, there's a bridge that's crossing the Honey Creek. The existing bridge was built in 1947, and as Aaron mentioned, it is load rated to reduce the allowable truckload that can go across that. The existing bridge is 30-foot span length, and it is about 34 feet wide. The existing foundations are critical for scour, and for all these reasons, we applied for funding for this location and received it from the MDOT program. So this is the location shown here. You can go to the next slide for me, please. The proposed replacement for this structure, instead of going back to the traditional steel beams and concrete deck, is just to go with a more simple, quicker to construct bridge type. It's just it's a box culvert, and the proposed bridge span will be 26 feet wide opening, and the vertical will be about 9.5 feet, and will be placed as precast segments of concrete in it's precast off-site, brought onto the site and placed, which makes it a quicker construction schedule, and yields a very durable and long, a bridge that has a lot of longevity. Another part of the layout of the bridge was considered during the design was to correct the horizontal curve that is going around this. Horizontal would mean as you're turning, currently you have to make two turning movements to adjust to go through the curve, and we've now modified that so that there's a single horizontal curve and you can turn, and just as you would have only one movement that you would make. So that makes a safer and more up to standard roadway design. So if we could go to the next slide. This is a picture of a similar box that will be as what we'll be using in this location. These are, as you can see, going on the right side there, the opening, and then as you look along the length of it, you can see the vertical piece members that are brought in. They're brought in segments approximately 4 to 8 feet in length, and then they're placed on a bedding of aggregate to make a very solid and durable structure. At the openings, we'll have a apron, they call it. It'll be a cast in place concrete apron that will reduce any kind of scour that may occur from high flow events, and will again protect the structure from the water flow there. So this on the left is a snippet of the plan of this proposed bridge. It will have return walls. These wing walls that go out at an angle will also be precast and will be placed. So again, this makes a quicker construction schedule, and after the placement of the concrete is completed, they will backfill and construct the road over just like you would any other road with the aggregate base, and then the hot mix asphalt HMA on the top. Go to the next slide, please. So Aaron, do you want to cover this? You want me to go in on this one?
Sure, I'll jump in, Nate. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
So I mentioned the third component in the overall infrastructure investment here is an improvement between the bridge and the roundabout on Miller Road. So that's going to involve the crushing, the pulverizing of the existing asphalt pavement. That asphalt will be reshaped to provide a crown, compacted, and then an asphalt overlay will be placed. So next slide. So here's an example of a pulverizing machine. We will be pulverizing and asphalt resurfacing approximately the 1/3 mile between the bridge and the intersection. I mentioned before, this part of the project is being funded directly with Michigan transportation funds out of the Road Commission budget. Next slide. So again, the crushing and shaping and the asphalt overlay, that based on the currently forecasted schedule, we foresee that occurring at the end of the project. The roundabout would be the first piece of our project. That would begin in late June or early July. Again, that's something we'll be talking further with Fonts and the contractor about to determine what their schedule is. We expect the bridge to start sometime after July. Based on the permit for the bridge that was issued by the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, EGLE, we're not allowed to work in the Honey Creek until after July 1st based on fish spawning periods. So the bridge by its nature would have to start after July. And both projects, both the bridge and the roundabout, have to be completed by the middle of October. Again, at this point, what we've discussed is the intention to start at the roundabout, to then continue with the bridge construction, and to wrap up the project this fall with the pulverizing and the resurfacing of that 1/3 mile between those two projects. But that certainly will be something that we discuss with Bonson. As I mentioned before, there are aspects of field construction that are beyond our control. And so there frequently on a project will be adjustments in the schedule. Nate mentions that the bridge that's going to be constructed, that we're going to be constructing, is a 4-sided precast concrete box culvert. Based on its span, it's classified by the state of Michigan and by Federal Highway as a bridge, but ultimately it's a big culvert. And precasting is done in a plant, and then it's delivered to the job site in segments, and those segments are set in place side by side. There are not a lot of concrete precasting companies left in the state of Michigan. And so all of them are very busy. What we've been told as we've talked to some of the contractors is that projects that are put on the schedule now at the precasting facilities, generally we're looking at a fall time delivery date to allow that time for them to get the structure precasted and cured. So I would say maybe sometime in September or October is when that bridge is going to be ready for delivery. But again, that'll be something that we'll be talking to Fonson about. They'll be discussing with their precaster. What we've indicated to the contractor is that regardless of the staging of the project, they have to maintain access for the residents that are between the roundabout and the bridge. So that access has to be maintained at all times for those individuals that live within the project limits. I mentioned that the roundabout for the construction, the intersection will be closed. And similarly, for us to remove the existing bridge and replace it, we will have to close the bridge. But again, we have to maintain access for the residents that are within our construction influence area. Next slide. Again, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I apologize. The roundabout, the intersection will be closed to all traffic. We'll provide access to property owners during construction. Nate has already reached out to Advanced Disposal, who takes care of the pickup of the rubbish and the recycle. And we've advised them we will reach out to the Ann Arbor Post Office to advise them of the upcoming project. There will be detours posted with this construction. Next slide. So for the roundabout, you can see here the posted detour will include providing access via Dexter Ann Arbor Road, Maple Road, and Huron River Drive. For residents that would live north of the project off of Wagner Road, they would come in on Huron River Drive. And for residents that live south of the project on Wagner Road, they would come in off of Dexter Ann Arbor Road. Now, there are other routes out here, and oftentimes motorists will determine the most convenient, the most straightforward route for them. But this is the route we're going to sign because this is the paved route. So again, this will be the signed route when the intersection is closed. Oftentimes motorists can be confused because one of the signs we put up in the field will say road closed, local traffic only. And motorists will say, well, I'm local traffic, I live locally. What local traffic only means is that if you live, I'll use an example, someone that lives north of the intersection closure. If you live between Huron River Drive and the Miller Road intersection, then coming off of Huron River Drive, you are local traffic. Similarly, if you live off of Wagner Road south of the intersection, you would come off of Dexter Ann Arbor Road and you are local traffic. But no one will be allowed to go through the intersection. As that work is being conducted, the intersection will be completely closed off. The only provision would be is for residents who have driveways within the closure. So if you have a driveway within the closure, then you would be allowed to enter the construction zone and go to your residence. Next slide. And go ahead, Nate, why don't you jump in and talk a little bit about the impacts to traffic for the bridge and the resurfacing.
Okay, thank you. The bridge will, as he mentioned, will begin after July, and that's required by the fish spawning that we have to stay out of the river until after July 6th. But when we go to the bridge construction, again, all of the local traffic will be maintained access, meaning you will be able to drive into your driveway and the contractor will provide a means for you to do that during the duration of the project. Again, the detour will be posted for this second half of the project. Emily, if you could go to the next slide, please. This will be the detour as posted once the roundabout is substantially complete and that traffic can maneuver through it. The west leg of the roundabout will remain closed to through traffic. And as you get down to the bridge, there will be a hole there. No traffic will be able to go through the location of the bridge. But if you live either side and you're inside of the construction area, you would be always provided access. And we will ensure that that is maintained as well as the contractor. So this one, as posted here, will be utilizing Dexter, Ann Arbor, and Wagner to maneuver around the work zone. Next slide. As Aaron mentioned, we will be reaching out to, we have already to the trash. Mail delivery, we will make sure that your mail is continued. Interaction as a pedestrian, we just ask that you maintain a safe distance through any work area and always be cognizant that of the big machinery. We just want to make sure everyone remains safe. And at the end of the project, the restoration will be made for any disturbed area that is adjacent to your property there. We just will make sure that that restoration and that is included as part of the contract document. Next slide.
Hey, Nate, before we go to the next slide, I think it's important to mention that as a pedestrian, this intersection is also closed to pedestrians during construction. We've had previous projects this year even where pedestrians have damaged or nearly damaged fresh concrete that's gone down. And so I think it's sometimes confusing whether closures apply to pedestrians and bicyclists, and these closures do. It isn't a safe place to be a pedestrian or a bicyclist while we're constructing these roundabouts in the bridge. So the closures apply to all vehicles, pedestrians as well. So please keep that in mind.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. That's good to mention. Again, here is some additional information locations for you to get updates. We have a subscription. If you would like, we can get your email and you will get project updates during the course of the project. And this is my number here and my email for you to contact me directly if you have detailed questions or would like to speak to me. I'm happy to help you at any time throughout the project, and look forward to getting a really nice finished product for you to use here.
And I'd like to mention that as Nate and I have presented today, we decided to split up the presentation because we'll both be working together on the project. I'm more so focused on the roundabout and Nate more so focused on the bridge. But I would recommend that you contact Nate first. He ultimately will be overseeing the entirety of the project, but certainly I'm happy to help as well. We provide Nate's information here, again, as that first point of contact for the roundabout or the bridge, and I'll certainly be happy to be Nate's backup and assist him and any of you in any way I can.
Okay, thanks guys. So we are going to open it up to Q&A now. So if you are viewing the meeting from your computer, in order to virtually raise your hand, first make sure you click Join Audio, and then you can raise your hand by clicking the Participants button at the bottom of your screen, and then the Raise Hand button at the bottom right of your screen. If you dialed into the meeting from your touch-tone phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. As the meeting host, I will unmute participants with raised hands one at a time. I will announce your username or the last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. We are happy to answer as many questions as possible, but please be respectful of each other's time. If your question is answered before you're called on, you can lower your hand by clicking the lower hand button or by dialing *9. So if you want to virtually raise your hand, you can do that now. We do have a lot of questions through chat, so we'll start working through those questions as well. Let me get to the start here. So one of the first questions is how, this is coming from Greta, Nate and Burke, how are we getting the space for this roundabout? Are you filling the valley to the southwest?
Nate, do you want to go ahead and touch on that as far as the dimensions of the roundabout, how we fit it into the existing intersection?
Yes. So the roundabout does take up a little bit more space than what the original right-of-way allows. We had to acquire some corners at the circle, and we have some easement, roadway easement along the south side along the south leg on the west side of Wagner. And that was mainly just to pick up the change in the geometry. The width of the road is, once you get out of these wider splitter islands and you're in just the normal, I don't know, I guess this shallower splitter, it's about 42 feet wide. That's less than if you had a 3-lane. So if you had 2 lanes each direction and a center turn lane, it takes up less footprint than you using that style of intersection. But there will be some fill there, as you're asking, on the Wagner side, the west side, just in order to support the roadway. We had to extend our limits out there, and you might have noticed some minor tree removal there.
And Greta, you can see we've got the overlay here. We'll post these slides and a recording of the meeting afterwards as well. And we also have this image posted to our webpage, our project webpage, if you want to see, but you can kind of see the overlay of the new road to what's existing here on the screen. All right, so the next question is coming from Roger. He has some concerns about getting into the roundabout from the north on Wagner in the evenings, worried about whether there's spacing enough and kind of traffic volumes. Can you guys speak to how the traffic volume will compare to what it is now? And really his specific question is, how will it compare to the roundabout at State and Ellsworth?
Well, we don't, this intersection, we don't see the volumes here that we see at State and Ellsworth. State and Ellsworth is one of the busiest intersections in the county. This would be similar to the roundabout, both in traffic volumes and in scope. The appearance and the size of the roundabout would be similar to Scio Church and Wagner Road. And so looking at some of our past roundabout experiences, we've considered that in the design and the upcoming construction of this roundabout in order to accommodate those traffic volumes. And based at looking at the geometrics and the traffic volumes, the single lane roundabout here provides sufficient capacity during peak hours to provide that flow of traffic for all four legs of the intersection, including the traffic that will be approaching from the north.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question from Jonathan. Knowing weather could change this, what's the expected closing date of the intersection? And can you provide a detour map? The detour map, Jonathan, I know you asked it, I think a little bit further down too. We have a link to the detour map on the project webpage. And then we can also send a link to email subscribers, so you have that link. But Aaron, I'll let you or Nate speak to the closure date.
Sure, and again, we expect it to be in late June or early July. That'll be something that we discuss with Fonson, the contractor, next week. We're going to be delving into the details, including their forecasted schedule when they would like to start the project. Again, under the MDOT contract, it allows them to start within 10 days of award. MDOT has not yet awarded the project. And something that I maybe would mention at this point for clarity is the funding being allocated for the roundabout and the bridge, it coming through state and federal sources. The contract with Fonson is actually between MDOT and Fonson. And then there exists a local agency agreement between the Road Commission and MDOT. And that indicates to MDOT that we will pay our fair share of the projects and that we will administer the projects. So we will act in the owner's best interest during the construction and during the payments to the contractor. So we will be talking to Fonson further about the schedule, when they want to start, when they want to close it. One thing we do have to consider is we do have the Independence Day holiday coming up, and construction activities are not allowed during the Independence Day holiday. And the holiday, as defined by the construction documents, with the 4th of July falling on Saturday this year, the contractor would need to cease operations at 3 p.m. on Thursday the 2nd, and they wouldn't be allowed to continue operations until the morning of Monday the 6th. So again, that's something else that certainly is going to factor in as we discuss this with Fonson.
We should note too, once a closure date has been determined, we will be posting changeable message boards, those flashing signs close to the intersection to give notice to drivers. We will also be posting the date on our project website and on the WCRoads.org itself, and then also doing email notifications to anybody who's subscribed to receive project updates. We also have pretty active social media channels, and this will be posted on our Facebook page and our Twitter. And so I encourage you, if you're interested and want to know the exact dates, the quickest way to do so is to follow us on social media or to subscribe to receive those project updates. And so we will be putting out a lot of information ahead of that actual closure date, so you'll all be notified. All right, the next question comes from Carol. How does the width of the finished roundabout project on Miller Road compare with the current width of the road? And Carol, again, you can see that on the screen here. If you can see our shared screen, we'll also post a picture of this to the website. But Aaron, do you want to take that one?
Sure, and this is similar to the earlier question about fill areas. And you can see this is a great aerial that shows the proposed roundabout overlaid over the existing intersection. And most of that widening that's going to occur is going to be in that southwest corner of the intersection, is where most of the widening occurs. So again, a large part of the new roundabout will lie within the existing road footprint, but we did need to fill areas. We did need to do some widening, and we worked with the adjacent property owners to obtain easements and temporary grading permits as needed to allow for the construction of the new roundabout, because the new roundabout is a larger footprint than the existing roadway is, the existing intersection.
Okay, so this next question comes from Jonathan. So he says, my assumption is power will need to be cut for the neighborhood at some point. Is it possible to receive a week's notice for those of us who have home offices and more?
And I appreciate that question. That's something we can certainly follow up with DTE Detroit Edison on. And thank you for asking that question. We can make sure that Detroit Edison is in contact with those residents that are relying on that power. And certainly during this pandemic period, it's become even more important as so many of us conduct work from home. So we don't take direct responsibility for notifying impacted users, customers of DTE, because we don't know exactly when they would need to do that power switch. But we will certainly follow up with our contacts at DTE and encourage them to provide as much notice as possible to individuals who are relying on that power source to conduct their daily lives.
Okay, and DTE is working on some pole relocations. I think they're nearly done with some pole relocations right now, correct?
That is correct. Nate and I have worked with several utility owners in this area. That's included DTE Detroit Edison, DTE Mishcon, AT&T, Comcast. Detroit Edison, by and large, is done with their installation of new poles and the relocation of their overhead wires. We've prompted Comcast to now come in and move their overhead wires from the old Detroit Edison poles to the new poles. Mishcon is working on the relocation of an existing low-pressure 2-inch gas utility at the roundabout. The bigger part of Mishcon's work for the gas utilities is at the bridge. And some of you may notice that Mishcon has dropped off materials and equipment for that purpose down near the bridge location. And then AT&T has significant work to conduct for the roundabout. And we expect that work to begin this week. And then that work will continue right up, likely up until or during the early part of the roundabout construction. AT&T is getting started with their relocation work right now.
Okay, thanks. Here's a bridge question. This is from Roger. How are you going to deal with the water flow in the creek during bridge construction? Honey Creek drains a lot of Scio Township.
Yes, so if you could go to the other sheet there with the aerial, Emily. Okay, so currently this is aligned where the stream line is. We have in the plan sheets a bypass that would go to the west of this bridge location using sheeting. That would be steel sheet piling that would be driven, and then the water would just have a channel of sufficient width that would bypass this area and maintain all of the flow. The contractor has not submitted their plans for what they're going to do specifically. This was as shown in the contract documents and can be, that may not be necessarily what the contractor chooses to use, but we will be required to approve any changes to what is shown.
Okay, thank you. So here's one, this is from David. What is the estimated opening time for Wagner only through traffic? I think probably with the roundabout, when do we think we'll have the roundabout open so people can go northbound and southbound on Wagner while we're doing the bridge? There's some confusion about that.
And again, that's something that we'll want to talk to Fonson about. Again, the contractor ultimately has control of the schedule. We set a start date for them. We set a completion date for them. And then we make sure that they understand they have to maintain access for residents that are within the construction work zone. But ultimately, it's up to them. I would say that the roundabout, you're probably looking at maybe a 2-month construction window on that. Again, that's my prediction. It really will rely on the contractor to let us know how they're going to undertake and effectively complete this proposed work. But under the current plan, they would substantially complete the roundabout to the point that we could allow traffic on Wagner, north and south, and on the east leg of the roundabout on Miller. The west leg would remain closed except for the residents that live down the hill, because the bridge is going to have to be closed at that point. So again, at that point, 3 legs of the roundabout would be open. But again, we're going to be discussing that further with Fonson to determine how they're viewing the project and how they think they can most effectively and efficiently complete the project.
And Aaron, that's something that we will also be providing a lot of updates on throughout. I know I keep mentioning our project webpage and the emails that we provide, but if you want information, I'd really encourage you to subscribe to those. We are trying to coordinate 3 projects here, which is great and very helpful. So we're really trying to only disrupt your lives for 1 summer, but it takes a lot of coordination. So we will be providing updates on those types of things to help answer the questions as we narrow it down. But it is a lot of coordination that we're trying to do in a pretty small area. All right, so the next question comes from Sonia. It says, for those of us whose houses lie within the repavement area, how will we access our driveways during that phase of the project?
And that's a great question, Sonia. So asphalt paving, I'll say during the initial work, the pulverizing, the crushing of that existing surface, there would be a very short duration delay. Basically, just the delay would only be involved in the machine moving through that third of a mile. And so, Emily, you can show that picture of the pulverizing machine if you've got it there. Again, the pulverizing machine moves along at a fairly steady pace. And then once the material is crushed up, traffic can drive on the crushed material. And then that material will be reshaped, it'll be compacted. And again, with the compaction of that crushed asphalt, again, it's accessible, traffic can drive on that. During the asphalt paving, traffic does need to stay off the asphalt pavement long enough to allow that surface to cool. More or less, it's allowing the asphalt pavement to set up, if you will, and to become more rigid so that it can support those traffic loads. It somewhat depends on the day of paving, what the weather is like that day. With us currently envisioning that resurfacing work occurring late in the season, in the fall time, it should be cooler days. And so you're looking at anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes, and traffic would be able to drive on that asphalt pavement. So it's not like concrete pavement. For any of you that may have experienced concrete work on your driveway or one of our roadways, concrete pavement has to cure for an extended period to gain strength. Asphalt does not. Asphalt generally in 30 to 60 minutes after it's placed and compacted, traffic can drive on it again.
Yeah, and our machines are not discreet. They're very big. You'll be able to see them coming. So if they're heading your way and you need to get out of your driveway in the near term, that's something where you just need to communicate with the crews, and we'll do our best to accommodate so that no one's trapped in or out of their driveway. Okay, the next question, this comes from Roger. He is asking about the width of the new bridge. Is it how wide is it compared to the existing bridge with the road surface, and would there be room to accommodate future bike lanes if that ever comes around?
So thank you for that question. I intended to cover that. On the bridge cross section that we have on the outside of the curve, or that would be to the north, we have a 7-foot shoulder. And on the inside of the curve, we have an 11-foot shoulder. And these widths are dictated by MDOT standards. They are designed for any new bridge that is placed. You base it on the amount of traffic and the curve and all the geometry. So that'll be what the proposed will be: 7 foot on the north and 11 on the south. which is far greater than what is out there currently.
Okay, thanks, Nate. So the next question is from Barbara. She says they live on Miller between the bridge and this intersection. What is the plan for us to access our driveways? She has a son who has special needs, and the school bus usually stops. We have another question about the school bus as well. And the school bus usually stops right at their home. How is that going to work during construction?
And thank you for the question. And yes, we will be in contact with the schools. As so many of us have experienced, the pandemic has introduced some uncertainty into not only this school year that's ending now, but the upcoming school year. But certainly our intent is to communicate with the school districts that would be involved and make sure they understand that there will be limitations as to their routes, but that we will provide access for those students to be picked up. So that'll be something certainly we can follow up on and ensure the schools understand where we're at in the project, be it the construction of the roundabout or the subsequent construction of the bridge, so that they know as that new school year starts, which route they should follow in order to pick students up.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. The next question comes from Carol, and again, this is about access, so we may have already covered it, but Carol's asking, what exactly do you mean by access during construction? I think we've already covered that one, Carol. It may be a little messy at times, but we're going to work with property owners to make sure that you can get in and out of your driveways as needed. And as Aaron mentioned, this is asphalt and not concrete, and so it's a little bit different animal. Aaron, is there anything else you want to add there?
No, and again, I understand the question. It's a great question to ask. Providing access doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to be a hard surface, because as we do the work, pavement will have to be removed in order for us to construct the new roadway cross section, in order for us to place the new aggregate base and the new pavement, for us to be able to construct concrete curb and gutter. Access means that it's traversable, that you'll be able to drive in and out. But again, to be very blunt, I like to tell people up front that it will get ugly before it gets better, because part of road construction is we need to come in with big equipment, we need to remove the existing road, and then start the construction of the new road. So when you first see that road work going on, it can look pretty ugly, but it just takes time for us to put it back together and construct a longer lasting pavement.
Thanks, Aaron. We have had some questions about how to get information and where our links at. So I just wanted to pause here for a second and just show you this project page that we've been talking about. If you go to WCRoads.org, which is the Road Commission's official website, we have a plethora of information on there. And if you go to this roadwork and construction, you can find this current projects page that I'm on right now. And you can see here that we've got an interactive map here of all of our current projects planned for 2020. And you can find the Miller Road projects here. And you can go, if you click there, you can see the page that I keep talking about. So this has all the information that we've talked about today. It has Nate's contact information right here. There are links to the slides that we presented in October at the design meeting. There are links with some FAQs that we will update as we get closer. There's also a link to the Detour there. And you can also, on this page, subscribe to receive those project updates. So if you click right here on this button that says subscribe on the bottom right hand, you can subscribe to all sorts of road updates. So we have project-specific updates for this project if you only want to know about this, or you can subscribe to receive updates based on a township. We really try to put that information out there, and that's going to be a great way for you to get the latest information about all of these different coordinating and closures and things that we've been talking about. So that's all available right on WCRoads.org. And we have that for for all of our major projects this year. And you can see there's a lot of construction in 2020. So I'll go back to the slides, but I just wanted to quickly share that. We do have some more questions, so let's get back to that. This one comes from Sonia, and her question is, just to clarify, this is a two-phase project. The first phase, roundabout, will be completed before the bridge. I know we've talked about this, Aaron. Could you clarify one more time? I know we're still deciding dates with the contractor.
Yeah, and again, yeah, the intention would be is for what we've proposed to the contractor through our bid documents is that they construct the project in two phases, that they work on the roundabout project first, and then they undertake the bridge construction second. And that would allow for the reopening of the Miller and Wagner intersection in the roundabout format, and allow traffic to flow through that intersection before the bridge would be closed. Again, however, we are going to talk to our contractor, Fonson. We've provided them with flexibility. Again, the only basically what we won't negotiate on is the start date and them providing access for the residents. Those are the things that we dictate to them. We also have a completion date, and again, that being in mid-October, but we do grant extensions of time if there is a reason to do so, a good reason. And that would be things like an extended period of bad weather, where we had an extended period of rain and they couldn't get work done. There's various qualifying events that are defined by MDOT that allow the contractor to fit and for us to consider an extension of time on the contract. So again, to get back to the question, what we've envisioned is roundabout construction first, substantial completion of the roundabout, and then the contractor undertaking the bridge construction and the closure that would be associated with the bridge. But we do want to talk to Fonson about that and see how they forecast the job being most effectively and efficiently completed.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. So then here we have a question from Kareem. Will the higher load limit on the bridge allow heavier trucks and tractor trailers on Miller Road?
This bridge, as required by federal funding, will be designed to take the MDOT loads, which is a higher load than what is on it right now. Right now it's limited to 30, 49, 65 tons. So that might not mean much to you, but that tells the truck operators if their axle weights are to these limits, they cannot go over this bridge. Because this is using federal funding, it is designed to the load requirements of the federal bridges, so yes.
The road itself, though, Miller Road itself is not, will still have the same weight restrictions as it would a normal county route before before and after construction, right?
Yeah, Emily, there's been no discussion that I'm aware of to change any classification on Miller Road. Again, as Nate mentioned, the new bridge will be constructed to carry full loading. And part of the reason we do that is we're making the investment in a new bridge. We can't predict what's going to happen in the future. And a bridge, very much even beyond a road that's constructed, a bridge is a very long-term investment. And so another piece of this to consider is this existing bridge carries load limits, but you're relying on that truck operator to comply with those load limits. And the only way to ensure that is enforcement. And a police officer simply cannot sit at that bridge and watch every truck that goes across it. So part of the reason we construct the new bridge is to allow for full loads, and a fully loaded legal truck is to enhance the safety of it, so we don't have to be concerned about a truck operator with an overload disregarding the weight limit on the bridge and simply proceeding to drive across.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. So the next question we have is from Harvey. Harvey, and I think we already answered this one, but have you talked to the school system about school bus routes?
And we mentioned that earlier, Emily, that'll be something with the uncertainty into the school year that's been introduced by the pandemic. We will be speaking with the school districts about the work we're doing. And hopefully they'll be able to provide some feedback on what their intentions are going into this fall. Because I know for some school districts, there's still some uncertainty in that as to how they're going to safely accommodate students returning to school. But we will definitely be in touch with the school districts to discuss this upcoming work.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Looks like maybe our last question comes from Greta, and she asks, have you been in touch with GFL in addition to Advanced Disposal? A number of homes on Wagner are served by GFL. They are on here on River Drive, and the work will impact how GFL comes to them.
And thanks for the question, Greta. I'll tell you, I was driving through the job site about 3 weeks ago, and I saw the advanced disposal truck. And I know I've worked in road construction too long when I get excited at the fact that I've identified who the trash hauler is. Because I pulled over, threw on my hazard lights on the county truck, immediately called Nate and said, Nate, write it down right now. It's advanced disposal out here. I saw the truck. They were picking up the trash today. Sometimes that can be a challenge on our projects. It's funny how each job is unique. And one of the things that's unique about each job I've ever worked on is who's picking up the trash and getting in touch with that company. So no, we can certainly, Nate's already reached out to Advanced Disposal, but we can reach out to GFL as well. And any feedback that any of you have in that regard, in regards to, trash haul, mail carrier type contact information, we welcome that because that helps us more effectively communicate with those that need to enter that construction zone and use it. We try to provide as minimal a disruption to everybody's life as we can. But the reality is that with the nature of road construction and bridge construction, it does disrupt people's lives. But Emily mentioned it earlier. We've looked at trying to do all three of these infrastructure investments over the course of one construction season. So our feeling was, it's like that old cliche, it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. If we're gonna come in and we're gonna do the bridge and we're gonna do the intersection improvement roundabout and we need to resurface in between, we wanna do it all at once. So we ask just if you would provide us with your patience, we will do our best to limit the impact to your daily travels and your daily lives. And please reach out to Nate, reach out to me, and we'll try to accommodate whatever concern or need you might have within reason. Again, like I say, by the nature of construction activities, it is a disruption.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Looks like we've got two other comments that I just wanted to share. Jonathan shared that he is a Ann Arbor Public Schools teacher, and he just says that I highly doubt bus routes or what the plans will be are going to be available prior to August. There's simply too much uncertainty on school access and availability to know it at this point. So it sounds like it's definitely, and I think that's clear to everybody, it's on Ann Arbor Public Schools radar as well. And like Aaron and Nate said, we will do our best to coordinate. This is certainly an unusual and challenging year, but we will do our best to coordinate and make sure that we give access when needed. And the last thing is Eric commented, Nate, that he says there are still many trash haulers in the area, not just Advance and not just GFL. And he suggests that maybe Scio Township would be able to help us with a list for that. And I believe there's some Scio Township officials on the call today. So with that, let me give the instructions for asking a question virtually. If you want to raise your hand one more time, and if you have any other questions, please put it in chat, or if you want to ask a question through your audio, you can. You can raise your hand by clicking the participants button at the bottom of your screen, and then the raise hand button at the bottom right of your screen. If you dialed into the meeting from your touch tone phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9, and then I would unmute you one at a time. Are there any other final questions in chat, or anybody that would like to virtually ask a question by raising your hand? Okay, it looks like we are done. We've gone through all of our questions. Aaron and Nate, is there anything else that you'd like to add and share with the participants today?
The only other thing I'll mention, and then Nate, I'll let you mention any final thoughts. I was one of the Road Commission team members that worked on the Ann Arbor, Saline, and Wagner project. And I'm happy to say that this morning we reopened that intersection. So Ann Arbor, Saline, and Wagner is now open. And one of the challenges we experienced out there was keeping motorists out of that closed intersection. And one extreme example we had of that was someone drove around our barricades and our road closure signs and ruined about $20,000 worth of concrete pavement that had been placed in that intersection. So we've considered that for this project and for all of our upcoming projects that involve a closure, the way in which we can take further steps to limit motorist access to the closed areas. again, we certainly will maintain access within the construction zone for the motorists that live within that zone. But what we may have out here is actually 2 sets of barricades or some further devices, considering the safety of motorists and those that are working in the field, the construction workers, my inspection staff. We have to ensure safety. And unfortunately, what I've seen over many years is motorists seem, some motorists, those that are unreasonable, seem less and less willing to comply with barricades and signs. They don't want to be inconvenienced, and Ann Arbor, Saline, and Wagner was an extreme example of that. So it's something that we're going to be talking to Fonson about and considering what steps we can take to secure our closures, to make sure that both motorists are protected and that we protect the construction staff that are on the site.
And I will add just that I look forward to working through anything that you would need. Please feel free to contact me at any time and I'll help you as much as I can, and look forward to a good project.
Thank you, guys. I again encourage you to check out the project page at wcroads.org, and there you can subscribe to receive project updates. As I mentioned, we will send a recording of this meeting, links to some of the things we talked about today to anybody who subscribed. We'll probably send that early next week as a summary, and it'll be posted to the page. And then we've got Nate's contact information there. It's also listed on the project webpage if you have any specific questions. So thanks everybody for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.